Hi to both of you. How are you doing today?
Doing good. I hope you do too, Nathan.
I'm
Pleasure
I'm
to meet
doing
you.
I'm doing great. I'm breathing the nicely filtered air from our real plants. So it's giving me more energy by the second. It's a pleasure to have both of you here. Thanks for accepting to come and chat about your respective activities and how you really take a very proactive role in sustainability. And how you help other also become more sustainable within your own circles. I would like to start with a simple round of introduction, maybe starting with you, Yuki. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about your role and what your company does so that everyone is on the page?
Great, of course I will. Thank you, Nathan. Well, as Nathan already told, my name is Yuki Hayashi. I'm the head of marketing and public relations at Ecolytic. So what Ecolytic essentially does is we provide sustainability as a service. It's a software available as a full-on SaaS product suite for banks and other financial institutions. What we essentially do is we provide or enable banks to provide much needed transparency on what bank customers do with their money and what impact they have per each transaction. So whether it is that, you pay with a credit card for your flight, or whether it's grocery shopping, your utility bills like energy and water, we are able to calculate footprints like CO2, but we're currently also working on biodiversity and water footprints as well. Yes, per each transaction, and help the banks thus to provide much more service to end consumers than they are currently doing, which is why I was also very interested in listening the last bits of the previous speaker. So yes, that's what we do. We try to revamp an entire financial industry and hope that millions of consumers are able to change their life towards more sustainability. In a nutshell, that's what Ecolytic does. We say every transaction has an impact.
Thank you so much, Yuki. How about you, Maxim? How are you doing today, and how do you support the cause?
I'm doing great, thank you. So yeah, Maxim, I'm the co-founder and CEO of DART. The mission of DART is to free cities with clean rides for everyone. And the way we do it is that we design and operate e-scooters, e-bikes, and other types of micro mobility vehicles, which we offer for short trips in European cities today. The important thing is that we want to do it in what we call a clean way. So for us, environmental sustainability, social sustainability is important. We want really to do it with the lowest impact for the environment. And this is why, for instance, one of the top 3 metrics for that is the carbon footprint. So how much do we emit per kilometer with our vehicles, and we really strictly manage it on a monthly basis. But obviously, I'm happy to talk a lot more about it, but this is just a short introduction. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. We'll absolutely dive a little bit deeper into this. I'd like also to continue with a somewhat personal question. Both of you have been working on the sustainability topic for quite a while in your professional careers. Have dedicated your professional careers even to making this happen. I'm curious to know, how did you realize that sustainability should be a part of that career, and when and how did you decide to actually implement this big decision?
Yeah. Yuki, you want to start? Or?
Sure. Of course I can. So Nathan, you already pointed out that I have 15 plus years of experience in the areas of, CSR, marketing and communication in general. The way I landed my first job as a CSR manager for a major American corporation, Fortune 500 company in the printing business, was actually a promotion. The former CSR manager retired, and I talked to my manager at that time and said, climate change is a very worrisome topic. And so from that conversation, it was a random conversation at lunch, she remembered it. And then when that person retired, she said, "Oh, Yuki, didn't you take a personal interest in sustainability?" And, you know, it didn't come from nowhere. My grandfather was an agricultural scientist working on the erosion of Earth. And mainly one of his main research areas was sand. So I grew up a little bit with that sustainability edge, hence my personal interest. Then I got the job working as a corporate social responsibility manager, and obviously with corporations, but we can perhaps talk about that later. The view is slightly different than a company like, you know, DOT or Ecolytic for that matter, that the new challengers come up with, you know, solutions that scale and that just not talk about, you know, in-house operations and looking only in your direct surrounding, but that, you know, the young challengers help to expand the view of businesses, of banks, of, you know, in terms of mobility as well. So yeah, but essentially, very briefly, that's my personal story. I'm very happy to be with Ecolytic. I joined the company in January this year. The last year I worked as a freelancer and was acquired by David, our co-founder and CPO, because I do feel that working for Ecolytic really gives me a purpose, since it's passion driven. Unlike, I don't want to shade corporations by no means, but it's a small firm working on a very, very big challenge. And so we work a lot, we work very hard, and it gives my work meaning, which is, I think, the most important thing and a very nice thing, actually, even if, and Nathan, you probably know that from Plan A, sometimes you're really tired and it's hard to only be driven by your passion alone, but you know that the situation is way too severe with climate action that you say, okay, I go this extra mile, and then you take pleasure and find meaning in what you do. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for this very inspiring answer. Maxim, I'd love to hear your own also reason for going towards sustainability in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, you know, 20 years ago, I had absolutely no idea about social and environmental sustainability topics. I think I got introduced first to social sustainability concepts and only after to environmental sustainability concepts. And the quick story is that I was working for Decathlon. I was working in Asia, so I was in China, in Thailand, I worked in Cambodia, Laos, etc. And obviously, we were working with a lot of manufacturers, which were at different level, I would say, of social compliance or social progress. And so with Decathlon, the sports retailer, I got very involved in making sure that the manufacturers were complying by a minimum of social standards, which could be working time, salaries, safety in factories. And so I spent a lot of time at that time to really work with all these manufacturers across Asia to raise the social standards. And so that's was for me a first, I would say, learning on how important it is to manage that and to really, you know, create really socially responsible environments for people or for employees. And then I was still not very involved in environmental topics. And there were a few things that happened. The first thing is being in European, especially in Asian cities and after in Europe, I could not see that in every city there were huge pollution issues. Obviously, I was reading the news about global warming. My brother was in the Green Party in France. And so I got to hear more and more. And my question was, okay, you know, I'm working for a business, I'm making money, but should I not do personally a lot more for environmental sustainability? And so I was always quite interested by the topic of mobility, like, okay, how can we make the cities a lot more green? How can we reduce pollution in cities? And in my mind, bicycles and micromobility were always a great solution to make, I would say, the cities much more enjoyable and also much more pollution free. And so I decided 4 years ago to get engaged in a shared micromobility, so with bike sharing, with the first company which was called Ofo, but Chinese. And what I realized is that when we are putting bikes in the street, people were using them. There was also a huge waste which was created by bike sharing company in terms of bikes getting deteriorated very quickly, and vandalism and all these things. And so my question was, wow, it should be a great service and very positive from an environmental standpoint to offer bikes shared in a city, but nevertheless, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily positive from an environmental standpoint. And so this is why I decided at that time to create DOT, which was the idea was, we think shared micromobility should be positive for cities. It brings a positive change from a social and environmental standpoint, but it needs to be done right from a environmental and social standpoint also as a company. And so that was the whole motivation for me around that, which was, okay, let's create a responsible company in this sector, so that where from the beginning we ingrained basically in the DNA of this company, in the values, in the culture, basically all these sustainability concepts.
Thank you. That's a perfect leeway actually for one of my questions. What are your key arguments to actually get your company on board with these with this ambitious vision? Because as was demonstrated by the previous speaker, and as we know, it's not easy at all to actually create a product that is sustainable, have the data to actually drive this decision, make everybody be on board in the team from the top to the bottom. What arguments do you use, and what arguments actually work? I'm curious to know from your standpoint. And maybe back to you, Maxim, to wrap things up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is when we created the company, the first brainstorm we ever did was what kind of culture, what kind of values do we want to build in the company? The really first, we are only 5. And so from the beginning, we said like one of the values was we want to be environmental conscious. And the second one was we want to be transparent in the way we operate internally and externally. And, and I already talked about the mission of the company, but the thing is, I think if from the beginning, you put it at the heart of the company, sustainability concepts, and then recruit people that are really passionate about these topics, and obviously, keep talking about it and make sure that people think it's very important. I think that already, in itself makes sure that sustainability will be managed actively in the company, because people join the company because they care about it. And when I ask people, why are you joining DOT? Often they don't tell me about, we are a high growth company. Now we have 600 employees after 3 years, but the people, the first thing they tell me is I'm joining because I'm really passionate about the positive impact you want to have or the values you have. This is what they really care. And if you have this kind of people that join, then you don't need basically to actively manage them on that, because they will naturally are already working in this sustainability direction. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is you need at some point to measure also. You cannot just hope for the best. And so this is why, as a second step in our company, we have put metrics in place, and especially for us, like the one that is the top metrics, which is carbon emissions per kilometer for us, because we are a kind of mobility company. And we ask an external consulting company to help us make sure it was reliable. And then we keep measuring it, and we have actions to reduce it. And our goal for us is to be lower carbon footprint than public transportation companies. So it means that we think that because we are so light in terms of infrastructures, we can really emit less carbon emissions than, let's say, tramways or metro. We are still above actually that level, but we think ultimately we'll be below. So that's and we have a few other things. We have also a sustainability committee with external partners that challenge us on what we do. So we cannot just pretend we are doing good things and having no checks. There are people that check basically also that what we say is true. So that's the third thing. And fourth thing is, I think, transparency internally and ultimately externally, I think is important also to get the trust basically on what you are doing. So that at least for me. Sorry, I was maybe a bit longer.
No, we're taking notes.
Yeah, I think I can agree with you, Maxime. A lot of the points that you mentioned are applicable to Ecolytic as well, especially when it comes to company culture. It already starts at the hiring stage. I mean, you know, the light bulb moment essentially for David to found Ecolytic and also the Organization for Sustainable Consumption, which basically makes available the methodology, because obviously the carbon footprints, the environmental footprints that I mentioned earlier during the introduction have to be calculated. So they are based on science, on scientific research. And so transparency is at the core of, you know, what we do. We cannot just fake values. I believe the previous speaker mentioned greenwashing, Nathan. So we don't want to be another greenwashing company, neither do you, Maxime. It's important to have the transparency within, you know, the DNA of the company right from the get-go. But David's personal light bulb moment was as he was sitting on a beach in Thailand, and there was really minuscule little plastic components everywhere. And that was years ago. Sustainability was not on his radar. He's a payment expert, right? And so he asked himself, how is it possible that our trash from Europe ends up here on the beach, right? And so this value transcends to basically the heart and the soul of what Ecolytic is. And it even can be applied to areas like mine. Obviously, you know, people who work in the product development, they deal, you know, with a lot of hard numbers and science to put into a product. But on the side of comms, as the head of marketing and public relations, I can say that when we hire new people, one of the questions is, you know, why are you interested in sustainability? What drives you? What motivates you intrinsically? To write about sustainability. As a former CSR manager, I can say that writing about both climate change, sustainability at the intersection with business and great societal changes, that's something that, you know, resonated with me when Maxime briefly mentioned it, is a skill in itself. And you can have 30 or 40 years of experience as a professional in communications and public relations. But if you do not intrinsically feel the importance of communicating in a transparent, solid, sound fashion, then, you know, working for an impact company is not the right place for you to be. And I agree with Maxime that once, you know, this screening phase of hiring new people or even freelancers is over, then you do not have to have a green stand-up meeting every morning to infuse the purpose into your colleagues or, you know, the managers. But the purpose then is already there. And what we seek to do, obviously, and that's the classical CSR case, we have green hosting, we seek to keep our carbon footprint as low as possible. I don't, for instance, don't have a car. I don't even have a driver's license. 20 years ago, people asked me, yay, hey, that's cool. I don't meet people every day who don't have a driver's license. We are super green. No greenwashing here, Maxime. Awesome.
You know, I only have a bike, and my bike is 40 years old, so it's totally secondhand.
Wow! Is it one of these old French ones?
Old,
like Peugeot?
No, old Dutch bike.
Wonderful.
Old Dutch bike. Oh, it's marvelous! I love that. But you see, that's the role model thing that I meant. You know, when you set a good example, and that's also what our founders, pretty much like you, Maxime, that our founders also try to do. I am not a vegan. I'm kind of a flexitarian, but my colleague, Maxwell, who's our PR and content manager, he started as an intern last year. And by January, we said, okay, we're going to hire you after his internship. And then over time, as he was working on the copy for Ecolytic, when he moved to Berlin from Wisconsin, he told me, Yuki, now I'm a vegan. Ecolytic works. I'm a vegan now. And over time, just, you know, that mindset change, and that's what we also try to accomplish with our software. Essentially, you can't just change the world at the click of a button sitting comfortably on your couch. You have to, you know, kind of reflect your lifestyle choices. For instance, you know, is the old Dodge bike, it gets me from A to B, and I also don't die if I don't eat meat. I can try it. For instance, this year we had our very first company meeting or company celebration, and we didn't have meat there. We had just vegan, like tofu, meat substitute sausages. And for some colleagues who are more used to eating meat, that felt weird. But they said, okay, wow, that was actually quite yum. And, you know, it's a discovery. And that's the thing. And Nathan, I think Plan A obviously transports that as well, to encourage people and not try to judge them and say, that was as if Maxim told his customers, oh my God, you're such a horrible person, you drive a car, you shame on you, shame on you. Nobody would be interested or would say, oh, well, maybe I should try these, you know, alternative transport means, right? It has to be kind of a fun experience, because deep down, we're all children and we like to play and discover new things. And essentially, and that's the comms person here talking again, people seek to hear that they're doing the right thing, that they're on a good path, and they want to be motivated, right? So what works for kids to motivate them so they learn, that the same goes for grown-ups as well. And that's a beautiful thing to do every day.
Absolutely. And what I find really interesting in what both of you say is the importance of the culture that is being built in a company. And it really resonates with me also as a founder, working really hard to instill or distill the cultural values that have made us get this far, of course, sustainable. So we do that. And one of my questions, perfect leeway, is it harder to motivate the base, or is it harder to motivate the top of a company? Both of them have very specific challenges. And I mean, you may be a little bit biased, Maxim, because you're one of the co-founders. So maybe you'll have a biased opinion.
No, I never thought about it, but I was trying to think now. But I think it's almost easier, I would say, the base, because I think it's a lot of for us at least, a lot of young people, which I think have grown in a much more aware, I would say, of especially environmental sustainability and global warming topics. So they are extremely, I would say, motivated to do something about it, right? Whereas I would say maybe my generation, I'm 40 plus, is you know, I think we have not grown in this environment. I mean, you know, I think when I was, you know, young, high school or whatever, we didn't even discuss this topic. It was just, you know, we didn't think about it. So I think the change of mind has a lot more to happen actually for my generation than it has necessary for the younger generation.
Is it
yeah,
for you?
I concur, Maxim. I absolutely concur. I mean, it's hard for me to say. I mean, I'm kind of middle management, honestly. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm a sandwich function, if you will. But obviously people, you know, we have a lot of tech people. We have a lot of engineers, obviously, working on a software product. And they are of a younger generation. And clearly, you know, even if they're not per se sustainability warriors or hardcore zero waste aficionados, they talk about the topic a lot more. I mean, I'm 41 years old, and I do remember, Maxim, as well, when I was a kid or an adolescent, you know, the kids during the break run out, eat their sandwich, and you'd see, you know, waste everywhere. They just throw the trash out everywhere and wouldn't think about it. I think that's changing a lot. We can also observe it within our customer base. For instance, the German challenger bank Tomorrow. Maybe some of you are familiar with them. They use our software. And obviously their clients, their customers, bank account owners are from a generation, I would say the late millennials, early Gen Z, that ask questions, right? They identify with many of the points that Greta Thunberg addresses. So they are basically already feeling the impact, and I think that's the point. The young generation, when they reach old age, I hope that they won't be in really deep trouble, but we were just living in happy land, our generation, Maxim and mine. We were, there was not a major war, not a major conflict. I don't want to talk about politics, but there were a few things, But when the environment, with regards to the environment, really the only incident was Chernobyl in the 80s, when, we weren't allowed to go to the playground, we couldn't eat fruits and vegetables, and everything was very scary. So that was an event of magnitude, but the awareness definitely is shifting. So I would say within our workforce, we are a very young company, and probably our management is more of an older generation by age, not by mindset. Yeah, but I think we learn together, right? We literally take this idea, the notion of the learning organization. Maxwell, my colleague that I mentioned to you, he shares recipes with me, and I said, okay, and this tastes good, and he said, come over, I cook for you, I'll show you, it tastes good, it's vegan, it's yummy, and I learn, right? And I think if more people like Maxime and me would say, okay, we don't have this attitude that only because we're older, we know we are wiser and we know everything better, but to be open-minded and see, what is it that the younger generation wants? What are their values? What drives them? What are they, experiencing or experimenting with? And that also helps us, obviously, putting our products in the shape that they are. And since we are working with, agile methodologies and Scrum and stuff like that, that helps, right? To have the agility also incorporated in the notion of sustainability.
Right. And this is a perfect opportunity for me to encourage those who are interested on how to convince your boss on launching the activities of sustainability in our second cabin animated by Christine Nagley. And who will be able to explain to those of us who are interested on how to convince a board, maybe of slightly older people than millennials. So if you're interested in that, you can jump off. We keep it here. There's still a few questions that we are very keen to ask you. One of them would be, how do you use maybe your industries? You work in mobility and in the finance transaction industry, which are two very big enablers of the rest of the economy. So you interact with people going to work, moving around, you interact with people actually buying and selling goods and services. Do you see this as a way to also ray beyond inside of your company, and a way to also encourage the dominoes to fall one after the others, if I can say it like this?
Yeah, on my side, I think we clearly told ourselves actually that our goal was to raise the industry standards, and so a lot of the things that we have done, we have been also sharing the way we have been doing them, especially when it comes to the way we manage our vehicle, we maintain them, we make sure that the defective parts are recycled and so on, and really aiming to get our vehicles to last as long as possible, which is something we have been communicating a lot, and we have done actually a lot of pretty intensive things to make it happen. But so we communicate within especially the industry, but sometimes outside also. We also work to build industry associations. So we have taken also some shared commitments with some of the key industry players. So together we wrote, I think it's the sustainability commitment chart or something like that, but But basically, where we said there were 10 points, and we said as industry players or operators, we are going to do this, and that by 2022. And so, you know, definitely, I think sharing what you are doing, or at least the best practices, and just communicating about it and trying to find these alliances where there are, you know, like commitments from the whole industry and not only yourself, definitely helps to get improvements. After, you have to be careful because at least in our industry, is that, you know, the greenwashing you are talking about, there is also, you know, we see some of our competitors, for instance, saying, you know, we are neutral carbon free, or I can't remember how they say it. And we know it's not possible, right? We know that what you can do is you can reduce your carbon footprint. You can reduce overall your negative impact on the environment, but it's never totally zero. And I think you have to be quite honest about it. And I think the prime is there are too many companies, and usually it's the companies that don't take this topic too seriously, that you know, from one day to the next, suddenly they are zero carbon. So you're like, okay, it's not because you paid for some trees that you are zero carbon. You need to reduce your actual carbon footprint, right? Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, true. I mean, you know, our mission basically is, as I said earlier, you know, every transaction has an impact, and I think the greatest impact for us is going to be a realization overall in societies all over the world. And society is a little bit of a too blurry word. People, you, me, Nathan, Maxime, me, everybody, to understand that for every euro that you spend, or dollar, or yen, or pound, that there is a carbon currency attached to it. Now, there are a few companies here in Germany. There's a brand called Vegans. They sell, obviously, vegan products. And on the products, you find a tag with nutritional values, ingredients, and so forth, but also the carbon footprint of that specific product. So it's an initiative, but the awareness of bearing in mind that if you, for instance, have to buy this avocado because in Berlin you need your avocado toast, but that it has a huge footprint because these things, they come from Mexico. And if you just have, you know, your cucumber from around the corner, if you buy your seasonal groceries, if you don't have to buy strawberries in November, you don't have to, right? That is really sustainability at scale. That's what we try to accomplish. That's where we seek to inspire and not just disrupt the industry, to make banks aware that there are not just actual currencies like coins and credit cards and bills, but that there's the carbon currency. And all the more happier are we to be in partnership with Visa. We're a member of the Visa FinTech Partner Connect program in Europe, and also have signed the deal for the global partnership, because obviously, you know, that is the leverage. Everybody, I would argue, owns, or a lot of people own credit cards, right? And use them for payments. And just imagine, you know, you look at your credit card statement or your bank statement, and then you see, okay, this is your impact, and this is what you can do to bring it down, right? Go and use Maxime's alternative transport methods. Why don't you try out to have a vegan food instead of eating meat, or reducing meat already helps. And then further encourage people to say, okay, so you can't go from 100 to 0 carbon neutral in one day. It's what Maxime just said. I completely agree with that. But what are the means, and how can you help to drive that change forward? Is through offsetting, right? I mean, sometimes people are thinking, oh yeah, planting trees, haha, but it's the first step, right? So you have to, you know, imagine yourself in your everyday life, right? To see, okay, I have an impact, I can offset that impact, so that there is a certain basic balance. But what we need, and if, you know, David, our CPO, was here, I am 99% sure he would say that now, is we need an infrastructure update that would help companies like Maxim's company to become the normal, the standard, not something like, oh, wow, this is green, okay, it's niche, or like ecolytic, oh yeah, that's nichey, no, that it becomes a standard. And how can we achieve this? How can we accomplish this goal? We were running out of time with climate change. Well, it's through investment. That's the large scale. That's first the realization, what do I eat? Where do I shop? What's my impact? But then the real key is the investment, the ESG, environmental, social governance, ESG packages that can help finance those industries, that help to make our lives better, in a better infrastructure, in alternative, you know, means of transport, sustainable energy providers, helping developing countries, not supporting, you know, the extraction of rare earths, which, trust me, as a CSR manager, caused me sleepless nights for, you know, toners and other components, with a heavy social footprint attached. Let's not even talk about the social footprints of some electronic components. It's awful. But we need to move the money in the right direction. We need to move, essentially, the entire financial markets. And that we can achieve through an absolute consumer empowerment, which creates this compound sustainability with exponential growth. Because one person alone, right? We don't need one vegan, but we need 100 of people who reduce their meat consumption, right? We don't need one perfect vegan, but more people who reduce their overall meat consumption, who allot their money in the right direction and in investing responsibly, or other way around, investing sustainably and consuming responsibly. So we don't claim, just like Maxim, we don't claim that we have the right solution, that our calculations are down to the 0.0, you know, level. No, we can't. But what we provide is transparency, accuracy, the best possible accuracy on environmental footprints, and, you know, leading a society or guiding a society, people, individuals on that path. Sorry, I drooled on, but
no, it's absolutely fine. We're unfortunately at the end of our session, but I would like to really personally thank you for all these inspiring ideas, you know, and kind of directions for us to really think about how to make all of the members of a company actually sustainable, and then even beyond, how can your company you know, influence this change at a really societal and, as you said, individual level. Maxim, Yuki, thank you so much for taking the time to explain to us what you're up to and how does it work. Feel free to stay for the remaining of the session, and a big thank you and a big round of applause, please, for these two brilliant speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend and rest of the day.
You too, Nathan. Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.